So thank you for joining me. Here we are again, trying to solve these questions that we all have and have difficulty finding an answer to. I guess, not everyone struggles with these big questions in life, but I'm sure most of us at least have a passing interest in terms of why we're here. What is this place? Does life continue on? In some ways, I consider it a bit of a curse, to be honest, to be obsessed with this topic, because the answers are, on one hand, they're seemingly obvious and clearly, available to us through these experiences that I read on a weekly basis. But on the other hand, it's difficult because it's impossible to prove, and our analytical minds are always looking for that proof to understand that what we hear through NDEs and religion and spirituality is in fact how it is. It's that old science versus religion debate, I guess. Science has never been able to prove that there's a God, and the way science is conducted, I don't think it ever can be. But yeah, anyway, that's why it's a little bit of a curse for me, I think, because you can never get that definitive evidence that you need. So, for me, I talk about this regularly, like this connection I have with this higher power, and it feels very tangible, but it's a connection that is difficult for me to accept in my own mind, I guess, and therefore it's even harder to explain. All I know is there's something there that is beyond my full comprehension, and I'm not pushing that away, and it's quite the opposite. The more I talk about it, the more I welcome it, the more stronger that connection gets. So I guess, and when I'm in an environment where people are talking about God and spirituality, it kind of weird things start to happen, like little synchronicities and coincidences, and I start hearing other people talk, and suddenly it has a more profound meaning to me. Like that what they're saying goes beyond what I am hearing at face value. It's like they might be talking about a totally different topic, and what they're saying might have a diverted meaning in my little journey, and and I guess what I'm trying to say there is how God uses other people to talk to you directly, and that's one way of that communication happening. And other ways are just through reading these experiences, just watching TV sometimes, listening to a song, all these ways that this divine, conscious, intelligent universe can connect to you is it's beyond belief for me. I hope some of you understand what I'm trying to say here, and it's making a little bit of sense. But the end of the day, that sort of thing is difficult to prove, because when you look at it from a human perspective, it looks like it's just a coincidence, and it can be explained in another way. So you can see the difficulty humans have in providing evidence for God. And for me, that's what I call it. That's what this connection is for me. And some people are very atheist and say that isn't possible, and there's no such thing. And other people are at the other end of the spectrum, and they they have this relationship with God, and they have this communication, and they have conversations, and there's no two ways around it. That is a fact for them. So yeah, it's a weird world we live in, and so many different journeys, and it makes it very confusing. And you just look at our availability to information now, and that's also like a double-edged sword, because if you think pre-internet and pre-TV, like, people got their information from books and books like the Bible, and that was the only source of spiritual knowledge, I guess, for a lot of generations. And now we just have access to every religion and all the information on spirituality that we want. And don't get me wrong, that's an incredible thing to have. But at the same time, I kind of am a little bit envious of people in the past who relied on something like the Bible to give them their spiritual teachings, and that's all they had. So that's how it was. But, now we are able to go in so many different directions to get that spiritual information that we need, that it kind of becomes confusing, because they're all slightly different, and they all have slightly different messages, and they all push us in certain directions. So for me, I'm kind of gravitating, and this is my 4th or 5th year of my spiritual journey, and I am sort of, what works for me, I guess, and everyone's going to be different, but I like these NDEs. They give me all the teachings that I find relevant to guide me in my life, and probably Christianity as well. Although, I have trouble with the Bible sometimes, I just find that this message of love and the way they explain how Jesus is almost this supernatural figure, and I kind of know there's something a little bit more supernatural to this world. So I like that element as well of giving us that kind of glimpse into what lies beyond this physical realm. And Christianity doesn't go too far into that, but it just reminds us that it's likely. And although I don't believe in the heaven and hell and that side of their description of the afterlife, I haven't really, to be honest, researched the Bible enough to understand what they teach about that. So I probably shouldn't disrespect the Bible too much without actually having a good research of it. And yeah, that's what I'll think I'll do at some point. So when I do that, I'll be a little bit more knowledgeable on what its teachings are, and be able to give a more accurate assessment. But yeah, I think, to put it in a few sentences, that understanding God is difficult, can't be proven. You need faith to accept that it is there, and in a way that's kind of the best we're going to do. Like, I guess some people are able to take that step further and get that connection to a level that is beyond doubt, but everyone's on their personal journey, and some people are going to have stronger connections than others. But yeah, anyway, let's get into this experience. This one is from a guy called Chris. So I'm going to start reading this one now. I had just finished a long semester of school and went to visit a friend. When we got there, he had some marijuana, which I had smoked before and wasn't always against it. After taking 2 deep inhales, I immediately knew something wasn't right. I knew that it wasn't entirely marijuana. I started to feel my heart rate increase. I stood up and tried to walk around to see if that would help. Within 5 minutes, I knew I wasn't good. I turned to my friend and told him to call 911 because I thought I was having a heart attack. He told me to try to calm down and that I was just having a bad trip. I immediately responded that I knew the difference and this was something very physical. He had me walk outside with him to get some fresh air, but as we stepped out onto the grass, I knew that my heart was beginning to pound even harder and that it was getting harder and harder to breathe. Eventually, my friend called 911. I remember telling him that if I passed out, to tell them everything that they could to save my life. I remember at that moment, I knew I was going to die. It became so real to me, the phrase, "You never know when your time will come," became a relevant statement. I was so aware that I was 28 and my life was going to end. The only regret I had was that I hadn't called my parents that day. I remember hearing the lady on the other end of the phone asking my friend what I was doing. He just kept telling her that I was clutching my chest and breathing deeply. She had us go outside onto the grass so the ambulance could find us. The ambulance was having a hard time finding us. I remember hearing the ambulance off in the distance, and as I laid down on the grass, I turned to my friend and told him that if the ambulance did not get there soon, I was going to die. At about that time, a fire truck arrived, in which a few men stepped out and started asking questions. I started to realize the complete urgency of my situation and that I was dying. I couldn't fully answer their questions. As they stood around me, I remembered shouting, "Help me." They replied, "We have nothing to help you with." In minutes, the ambulance finally arrived, and within no time, I was on a stretcher. My heart pounding near out of my chest, breathing laboured. The paramedic began asking me questions in which I was not able to answer. At that moment, I remember feeling my heart start pounding even harder, and I knew I was about to die. I couldn't take it anymore, and I said the words, "God, I'm ready to go home." As the last word ended, the lights went completely out and everything was completely quiet. I felt the calmness come over me, calm I had never felt in my entire life. Just utter peace. Time stood still. Linear time did not exist. I did not have a thought going through my brain. It was pure calm. At that moment, an intense bright light began to envelope me. I remember how good it felt. With this light and pure calm that was around me. Then, as the light began to increase, and the calm began to increase as well, out of nowhere, a voice said, "You're not ready yet." I remember realizing I had a body, that this wasn't all I remembered, and I said the exact words, "I'm not ready yet." Instantly, I was back in my body. I could feel my heart again. The paramedic was yelling around me, saying, "He's having a heart attack." After that, I looked up. They had cut my shirt off. I had all stuff attached to my chest, a breathing tube in my nose. IVs were hooked up into my hands and arms. After that, I awoke in the hospital to the doctors and nurses around me. They were talking and asking me questions in which I had no idea what the answer was. I went back out of it. I awoke a few hours later. A nurse at my side asked me what day it was. It was so difficult to answer, but eventually it came to me. A few minutes later, I heard a voice that I recognized out in the hall. It was one of the paramedics. He came in and said he was glad to see me alive. We talked for a few minutes and I thanked him for saving my life. After I left the hospital, the only word and resounding feelings I had and could take from the whole ordeal was love. I knew deep down that our sole purpose on this earth is to love deeply and strongly. Life is love. I will take that with me for the rest of my days. I'm not afraid of death at all anymore. I know that an afterlife awaits us that is beyond anything our human minds can comprehend. On a side note, one other thing that has always stood out in my mind concerns growing up with a Christian upbringing. I had always heard of heaven as home, but never really used the term. When I was near death and I said, God, I'm ready to go home, I knew with all my heart that my soul had taken over. My soul was ready to return to its home. We are all here as a lease to fulfill a purpose, and when that purpose has been fulfilled, we will return home. That is the end of Chris's experience, quite a short one today. This experience, as you just heard, didn't talk too much about the actual near-death and what happened beyond the veil, but it finished with some words of wisdom, and that is kind of what drew me to reading this one. But it is getting a little bit harder for me to find these experiences that have it all, so to speak, all the elements that I like to read about anyway. So, but it's still plenty of information that there's still plenty of experiences for me to go through. So there's no shortage of material, that's for sure. But I have picked the ones that talk to me instantly, like that. Most of those ones have gone. So the ones I am left with, have patches of profound stuff, but sometimes not as much as I would like. But anyway, let's go through this again. Like, Chris, good on you, Chris. Appreciate you sharing this experience, mate. It is always interesting to hear someone's experience of the other dimension, and this one starts with him smoking marijuana. Now, I used to smoke marijuana when I was a kid too, and I knew lots of other people who did as well, and I gotta be honest, I've never heard of marijuana being the cause of someone's almost death. And in this case, this sounds like the marijuana he is smoking is probably got something else mixed with it, because as soon as he smokes it, he feels his heart rate go up. It becomes difficult to breathe, and he thinks he's having a heart attack, and tells his friend to call 911. And the friend's like, no, I don't want to call 911. I've been smoking marijuana. I'm paranoid. And you're probably paranoid too, and having a bit of a panic attack. But yeah, in the end, they kind of figure that this is potentially a serious incident, and they do end up calling 911. And when his friend makes that phone call, it's like he accepts that this is the part where he dies, and he's kind of thinking to himself, you never know when your time will come. And that is so true. Like, for all of us, you never know when that last breath will occur. So although this life is challenging, as I read that line, you never know when your time will come, and has plenty of moments that I personally make me think I don't want to be here. Like, you read an experience like this and it kind of reminds you that life is precious and life is a gift, and it's an incredibly miraculous thing that you're even here listening to this podcast, living in this physical realm. Just the mind-boggling odds of that never occurring is too much to even contemplate. Yet here we are on this big planet, spinning around this big ball of fire in this big universe of blackness and galaxies, and here we are, these little human beings, listening to someone's experience of the spiritual realm. And just try to be grateful for this time you have on this earth, and push through those phases where the challenges are a little bit intense and overwhelming, because life is precious at the end of the day, and there's so many things to be grateful for when you put a bit of effort into thinking about them, and just being present, having this body and this human experience is one of those things that is miraculous. And I never really understood when people said, look, life is short and quick, and but now that I'm almost 50 and starting to face my own my mortality is becoming more front of mind, in that I understand I'm not a bulletproof kid anymore, and like this experience says, you never know when your time will come. So there's I think the older and wiser you get, the more you see the gift of life and what it is. And although that is not a permanent state of mind for me, I do get days, moments, minutes where I'm just in awe of this whole experience. And I treasure those moments, because like I said, the challenges inevitably overtake that feeling of wonder and joy, and at the same time, it is a gift to receive those moments as well, and hopefully you're getting plenty yourself. So he's facing the end of his life, and he's only 28 years old, and he starts to have a few regrets. Like, he's thinking, oh, why didn't I call my parents that day? And he just starts listening to what his friend's saying on the phone, and what the 911 operator is advising them to do, and she's just saying, just keep breathing, the ambulance is on its way. So she also says to the boys, go and wait outside the house on the grass so the ambulance can find you easier. And he's thinking the ambulance is taking a long time, and wondering why the ambulance can't find them. But then he finally hears the ambulance siren on its way, but it turns out that the operator has called a fire truck, and the men jump out to help them, but realise they don't have the medical equipment to assist in this health emergency. So they get in touch with the ambulance and give them more directions and tell them where exactly to come. And before they know it, the ambulance is there, and they've got a stretcher, and he is just hanging on. He can feel his chest pounding. His breathing is very laboured, and he is facing the end of his life, and he's only 28 years old. So he lets out the words, "God, I'm ready to go home." And as those words are uttered, the physical realm vanishes. He just lets go. The lights go out. And then he moves to this next dimension. For him, there's silence. Everything, sound-wise, goes. He feels blissfully calm. Just total and utter peace. He gets this experience of timelessness. He says, time just stood still. Linear time did not exist. He doesn't give us much of a description of what he is seeing in this part of the experience, just the feeling he's get and the lack of sound. So for him it's quiet. There's nothing distracting going on. He's just, he says he's even free of thoughts. He's just totally just being, just existing. I guess some people might reach this state through meditation. I'm not one, but I'm not a great meditator, even though a lot of these experiences tell us that meditation is a great way of, not only experiencing this other realm, but a great way of quieting our own mind and functioning in this realm. My mind is too crazy, too busy, too focused on the next task to want to meditate, and I don't think you can sit down and force yourself to meditate. It kind of has to be something you want to do. But for me, I'm just not at that point yet. I'm sure one day I'll try and do that a little bit better, but at the moment, just not really super keen on it, and I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I would like to be good at it, and I would like to practice it a little more, but it just doesn't feel right. And as we all know, everyone's on their own journey and has their own path to this connection with this other realm, and mine just doesn't happen to be through meditation. But hopefully you people out there are able to put a bit of time aside for that, because everything we hear, and in terms of even scientific research, says that meditation is good for us. So he's not experiencing much here except peacefulness, and I guess what more can you want? But at that moment, he says, an intense bright light begins to envelope him, and it feels intensely good and even calmer with this light there. And as the light increases in brightness, the calmness also gets increased as well. And then the experience has an auditory aspect to it. The light then says, "You are not ready yet." And these are the exact words that the light is saying. It doesn't say what the voice sounded like. It's just a pure description of the words there. So instantly, after hearing these words from the light, his soul jumps back into his body. He starts feeling these physical sensations again, like his heart's beating, his ears start working. He hears the paramedic yelling that this man's having a heart attack. He looks down, his eyes are now back working again, and he sees that they've cut his shirt off. There's tubes and IV lines hooked up to him. And he just sort of goes back to sleep, and then wakes up again when he gets back to the hospital, and he has the doctors and nurses all around him. And then he says a few minutes later, he sees one of the paramedics who resuscitated him back at the place where he was smoking the marijuana, and they have a bit of a chat, and he thanks the paramedic for saving his life. And that's his little trip in hospital. But this is, for me, this last little bit is the interesting bit, because after the hospital, he kind of has a bit of an after effect from this near-death experience, although there was no real mention of love or anything like that from guides or God or any messaging at all, really. The only message he got was, it's not your time and time to go back. But for him, it's a little bit different. He says that after this experience, all he really thinks about when he reflects on it is this feeling or this understanding of love. And that's all he really can take away from his whole ordeal. He says that after this experience, the intuition he gets is that deep down, our sole purpose here on earth is to love, and to love deeply and strongly. He says life is love. And this is the message that he got from this experience. And this is how he will carry this experience with him for the rest of his days. And that is his desire to love more people and be that source of love that he experienced in this other realm. For him, the experience has taken away his fear of death, because he knows that there is, I guess, not really any such thing as death. It continues on. This experience we have is, once the physical body expires, it just turns into another dimension that is difficult for all these people who have this experience to actually fully comprehend or explain what it is like. But nonetheless, I guess the main takeaway from that is that life is, it can't be destroyed. It continues on, just in another form. Once this body we have is no longer supporting the soul, it just goes from this physical realm into a spiritual one. And he ends here by reflecting on when he says during this experience that, God, I'm ready to go home. And he says this just before he crosses over to this dimension he's just explained. And he says, when he reflects on this, he sees it as his soul taking over. Like he feels that it was his soul that said these words, because as a 28-year-old, he'd never in all his 28 years really thought of going to this other dimension or going to heaven as going home, and never ever used the term himself. So he was surprised that these are the words he uttered just before his consciousness was lost. And this for him is evidence that his soul was actually directing him to say those words, because the soul was the one that was actually ready to return home. And he just ends by saying, this body we have, it's a temporary thing, and we're here to fulfill a purpose. And when that purpose has been fulfilled, we all get to go home. So purpose is a very, it's an interesting topic, and it's everyone's obviously got their own purpose, and what some people have got seemingly more obvious purposes and direction to their lives than others, and some of us might not seem to be achieving too much from a human perspective. But I think it's more those little things like having children, or being a good wife, or being a good husband, or doing your little job well. These purposes are, I think, just as important as those more bigger roles we see in our time here on Earth, in terms of, well, some people go on and become presidents, some people are movie stars, and I'm just thinking of people who are famous and well known here, and they've got more obvious purposes than others. But generally, for me, I think the best purpose of all is just to love more and to deal with whatever situation you have in front of you with loving intent, and just those small random acts of kindness that ripple through other people's experience and makes their life a little bit easier. They're probably the most profound reasons to continue on this earth, and because they're ways of spreading love, and love is the best way to navigate this existence, because not only does it make you feel better, but it obviously makes others and spreads peace and makes this whole experience easier for everyone. So purpose, it's hopefully what yours is, and if you don't, then maybe it's just those smaller things just to get you started, and who knows where that leads, because once you start connecting to this divine source, all kinds of different opportunities shoot up, and your journey can take a whole new direction. And I'm just talking from my own experience here, because a few years ago I was just stuck in a dead-end warehouse job and really felt no desire to continue on at all. But now here I am studying and getting into this God stuff, and and actually loving it, when I thought that was just not possible. But here we are, and this is how life has turned out for me, and I look forward to talking to you for a long time to come, because I enjoy doing this podcast, and not only just from my perspective in terms of me being reminded of what more is out there, and it's the best bit about it is hopefully you guys get something, you learn something off it too. And although I'm not the most articulate and gifted in terms of communicating this message, I do like to read these experiences for you and throw a bit of my silly commentary on, just to see if that can add a little bit more depth to how you're interpreting it. But thank you for listening to me. I love talking to you, and I look forward to talking to you again next week. Be good, and sending you lots of love. Take care.